it really shouldn't be me doing this for you, but okay, just a little. So the vast majority of my unschoolers who happen to know a second language, that second language in most cases is Spanish. And so they come into Portuguese all excited and super confident, thinking it will be a breeze, until they realize it's not that straightforward. So today I'll explain why and what you, not me, should be doing about it so that you can make the switch and stop mixing up the two languages. Because if you know Spanish, you do have an advantage. However, are you making the best of it? Olá, eu sou Catarina, a Portuguese polyglot whose Spanish is, to be honest, not that great. But since I don't teach it, who cares? And just to show it off a little bit, me gusta la noche, me gustas tú. ¿Qué voy a hacer? Je ne sais pas. Well, that was French. But anyway, that's precisely it. French, Italian, Portuguese, Spanish are all siblings. They all share the same root, that is the same mother. I'm talking about Latin. So they are bound to be mixed up. A lot of the vocabulary will be the same, minus the annoying false friends like polvo, which means pó, dust in Portuguese, but actually it sounds like octopus for us. Now, do start making a list. Still, not having to learn vocabulary completely from scratch doesn't mean you will understand Portuguese automatically. The danger of knowing Spanish, on the other hand, is that you expect it to sound the same, but the way both languages are pronounced is extremely different. Spanish is not a phonetic language, whereas Portuguese has queens, kings, and mistresses. If you're clueless about what I'm talking about, you can watch my Listen to Portuguese masterclass after this video. I'll leave a link in the description. So rather than sounding very different, listen to this. Yo también voy a Barcelona. Eu também vou a Barcelona. In short, while you might be able to read some Portuguese with your knowledge of Spanish, understanding it when spoken is another story altogether. But back to the differences between the two languages. I like to see Portuguese and Spanish as Siamese twins. They look almost alike and tend to blend in our heads, making it really hard to tell which is which. Your job is to separate them. Yes, you heard it right. An operation is required to make it crystal clear which is which language. So once you make that distinction, you can start seeing each for what they actually truly are. And this process may involve taking a little break from Spanish, assuming it's not your native language, of course, so that you can focus on Portuguese for a while. Then, when you feel ready, you can finally reunite the twins by bringing Spanish back into your life. I see people spend some time even mourning the loss of Spanish that naturally happens when you dedicate more of your time to Portuguese. But don't worry, it will come back to you. And after focusing on Portuguese to bring it up to speed, you can then finally integrate both languages back into your brain. So what are the main differences besides pronunciation and vocabulary? As I said in the beginning, I will mention a few, but this is something that really you should do not in one sitting. It is rather something you can bit by bit add to your notebook or so as you engage more with Portuguese. One thing that comes to mind is the preposition a that seems to creep into every single sentence in Spanish, which sounds really weird if you then do the same in Portuguese. The sentence, I'm going to eat an apple, me voy a comer una manzana, in Spanish, is simply vou comer uma maçã in Portuguese. So no a there. Now, another thing that is really clear is that while in Spanish, prepositions and articles are individual words, solteirões we might call them, in Portuguese, they get married, as I like to call it. In the city translates to en la ciudad, na cidade. Ein plus a. This is such a simple thing to fix, isn't it? But one thing I noticed the other day listening to a Spanish doctor speak for a good half an hour or so in Portuguese, she spoke really well. But you know what really stood out? She would say, instead of estavam, estavam, tiram, tiran, duram, duran. In case it's not clear to you, my Listen to Portuguese masterclass would explain it all. But basically, in Portuguese, you hear a soft nasal sound whereas in Spanish it's a distinct N. N. There's plenty more differences like todo and tudo, muy, mucho, and muito, but really it's much more efficient if you carry on this list with examples based on mistakes you are currently possibly making. Oh, I almost forgot that if you have trouble understanding spoken Portuguese, it's likely you might need help getting rid of your Spanish accent when speaking Portuguese. You can check about this very outside of the box idea I started using with my unschoolers by watching this video next. It is hilarious, cheap, and very effective. It will make you hyper aware of how different your mouth needs to move when you speak Portuguese. Obrigada por verem, obrigada por me ouvirem. Até à próxima.